And everybody, please welcome Yoshi doing vulnerability and positivity for deeper learning. Take it away, Yoshi.
Thank you. It's nice to see so many familiar faces as well. So before I start, I actually want to apologize. While I was making these slides, I realized vulnerability might actually give the wrong impression here. So I'm going to change that slide to authenticity and start again. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Yoshi Grote. I'm in my 9th year of teaching at Kyoto Sangyo University, where I teach mostly upper intermediate and advanced level content classes. And before COVID-19 hit, those classes were also multicultural with our ryugakusei joining in. So very quickly, I realized we had different nationalities, different experiences, different ages, and also to a certain extent, different language abilities coming together. And the need to unite in a singular classroom culture was very, very great. So I'm just waving to some people I see come in there. As teachers, we often talk about this classroom environment or the classroom culture. So before I start, I just would like to ask you to unmute yourselves and just shout some key words about what kind of environment or culture do you aim for?
Comfortable.
Right, yeah.
Comfortable.
Community.
Yes.
Safe.
Yes.
Accountable.
Ooh, nice one.
Useful.
Yes.
Supportive.
Mm.
Fun. Fun.
Fun. Okay, let's end on that one.
Student-centered.
Student-centered, so important. I agree with all of those things that you said. I put some other keywords here. But this is kind of what we all want, but how do we do it, right? Because our students don't automatically come to our classes feeling brave and curious, for example, or ready to open difference with, ready to welcome difference with open arms. And not only do they come from these different walks of life or different experiences, they're also not coming into our classrooms empty-handed, right? They're coming with the baggage from the week or the baggage from the day. So that means they might have just broken up with a partner, or they might have just come from a really, really boring class. And because of that, we as teachers, we understand the need to have a warm-up or an icebreaker. But over my years of teaching, I kind of decided that I want to do more than break the ice. And I want my students to be more than warm. I want them to be hot or really ready for a deeper kind of learning. And when I use that phrase, deep learning, people often think of the AI deep learning, you know, having computers that are able to learn without human interaction. That's not the deep learning I'm talking about here. Learning, we often think of as synonymous with gaining information, retaining it, or gaining new skills. Whereas deep learning, I often think of as the step beyond that. So one of my friends, Joseph Scholes, who I'm sure many of you know, explains that deep learning is learning that has transformative potential, learning that helps you grow and change, or a kind of learning that involves experience and emotion. So how do I get them ready for that? How do you go beyond the warm to creating this kind of cohesive, open culture? Well, what I do, I mean, I do a lot of things, but I only have 25 minutes. One thing that I do is I replace that, you know, what did you do last weekend type warm up with one of 3 different kinds of activities. A self-disclosure activity, something I also call engineered vulnerability or authenticity creating activity, or a mindfulness, positivity, well-being promoting type activity, or a team building activity, which I think kind of combines both. And that's perhaps why vulnerability is not really the best word here, because we're not aiming for students or teachers to feel unsure or out of control or to accidentally disclose something. That's absolutely not what we're after. We're after controlled and purposeful self-disclosure, and also activities that build and raise teacher and student well-being. And I think that that's a great combo, because if you have a negative kind of feeling in your classroom or a negative environment, but at the same time you're promoting high levels of vulnerability, what you end up with is a very uncomfortable situation, right? We don't want someone, you know, disclosing their alcoholism or something and not having an environment suitable. On the other side, if you have an environment with no disclosure whatsoever from teachers or students, but one of, you know, high positivity, that's great. That's a very fun, comfortable environment, I think. But I also think of it as a little bit like a superhero type environment where the students and the teachers are sort of putting on a face of perfection. And I think that that doesn't necessarily lend itself to this deeper learning that I'm after. So this is kind of the area I'm trying to get to. So we're only going to scratch the surface here, but my goal is to give you a kind of example of each one of those three types of activities. And then spend like 5 minutes together discussing them. Maybe you have your own that you could share, or you could ask questions about them. And I'll also tell you sort of how my students have been impacted by these. So let's start with self-disclosure. I do a focus group feedback at the end of a couple of my content classes, especially this one is connected to gender studies. And this particular activity is the one that students feedback over and over again that they love. This is the turning point in their classroom where they come together. The activity is based on a video, which is an ad for TV Denmark. I'm going to show you about 2 minutes of that video and then explain how I adapt this to my classroom. Let's hope this works. You get the general idea though. So how do I actually do this? I show the video, the whole video, and then I ask the students to, on a little piece of paper, write down 1 to 3 things that they would be willing to disclose with the class. Now, getting the balance is important. So we talk about, okay, something more authentic about you than what you ate for breakfast, but not something so threatening that you can't sleep the night before class. And they pretty much get it. And they write these to me anonymously. I collect all of them. And they write things like, you know, my father died when I was young, or I feel lonely in a crowd. They're actually very insightful, good comments that they write. I always throw in some humorous ones, like I still pick my nose. And then I take these activities, these statements, and I write them on a PowerPoint screen to prepare for the following week. I get all the students, we clear the classroom, we stand in a circle, and these statements come up one by one on the screen, and I read them out. And I tell the students, if this is something that is true for you, please step into the circle. There are some rules, of course, like you are not allowed to push anyone else into the circle, no matter what you know about them. If you yourself don't feel comfortable stepping in for something that's true about you, even if you yourself wrote that statement, you don't have to. Just go with your own comfort level. And it's basically a silent activity. And then after, they have a little bit of time to talk to each other and reflect on, you know, how they felt. This activity takes a little bit longer than 10 minutes, but it does seem to be really, really worth it. I do have other activities. If you're interested, please let me know. I will email them to you later. But students feed back on this, and I'm just going to show you some of their words here, and I've highlighted the important ones so you don't have to read everything. Helps them feel relaxed, like they're not alone, or that they were braver. Interestingly, at the end, they often say, you know, I really wanted to step in the circle for that statement, but I couldn't. But I was so amazed to see those people who did, and that really brought the connection, which is also what they report on. They grow close. They feel a connection. So right away, you have some of those keywords that we mentioned, right? When we're trying to create that classroom culture. That's self-disclosure. Team building is another one. And these photos are taken and shown, of course, with their permission from an old class of mine that was multicultural. So we have a Japanese, Italian, Vietnamese, Japanese, German, Malay students here. And there are a whole bunch of team building activities online that you can adapt for your classroom setting. But I love these because they don't take a lot of time. They take your time to prepare for them, but they don't take a lot of class time. And they're great because one, they work on different skills, right? So a student who maybe is not as confident with their language ability, or is not as academically inclined, they might be a genius with spaghetti marshmallow tower construction. It also connects them through physicality rather than words, which I think builds a strong connection. And also laughter, and laughter is so important. And it happens all the time, like when another group that was building a balloon structure like this, their balloon structure collapsed and created this awkward shape, and that just the students lost it. But how do they feel?
10 minutes left.
Thank you. They say they feel awake, which we want, right? We want them to be awake. And here's the baggage. I had a really, really boring class. I was always like slightly falling asleep. And when I came here, we had to stand up and move. It wakes me up. They feel relaxed. And that's really important if you're teaching challenging content. So this particular class, I'm afraid to come to this class, right? Because that's the class where it was high level. They had language anxiety. They had anxiety about the exchange students, maybe anxiety about talking about some of the content. So getting relaxed is very important. And last, these positivity activities. We know that raising students' well-being is worthwhile, right? Like on this quote. So as well as these self-disclosure and team building activities, I also try to include activities that are connected to Dr. Martin Seligman's PERMA model. Some of you may be familiar with this, or with Martin Seligman, who's often talked about as the father of positive psychology. And these activities are all things that he believes make up well-being. And in general, he feels that the well-being can be trained, just like we can train our bodies physically. We can train our minds to focus more on the positive. And I don't have time to speak about all of them, but I'll talk about these two. So instead of asking, what did you do last weekend? I might get them to focus on the positive by saying, you know, last week, can you think of 3 things that have been going really well for you and write them down? And now share what you're comfortable with the partner. Or what are you really grateful for this week or today? And share what you're comfortable with a partner. And you can see the change, you know, when they're sharing this positive emotion, you can see it on their faces, the enjoyment of doing that. And that puts them in a better space to deal with your class. engagement is about, being in the moment, or mindfulness. And those of you, and I can see some of you in the audience here who would be good at leading your class through some kind of meditation. You know who you are, Avril. If that's not me, I'm not very good at that. But another example is I'm very fortunate when I'm face to face with my students, our classes back onto this beautiful outside area. And so for the first 5 minutes of class, I might take them outside and say, you have 5 minutes and I want you to listen in silence. And we come back and we say what we've heard. And that's also, of course, connected here because I've made them do some physical activity. I can't control their food or their sleep, but I can help with that in the classroom. And all of this stuff sounds really strange and really frou-frou. And a lot of teachers are like, what are you doing outside? Or why are you popping balloons in your classroom? But I would argue that that makes part of the culture special, right? The students feel proud to belong to this feeling of a special culture. Again, it's open and awake and everybody participates. And I think that's kind of what we all want. So I've spoken fast and I haven't said anywhere near as much as I'd like to say, but I know we have very little time. So I'd like to just open up to ask you if you have any activities you'd like to share or questions that you would like to ask. Looks like Melody has a question. Or are you scratching your nose?
I was scratching my nose, but yeah. Usually, I'm really missed doing this year because of COVID and being online. But usually, I would have students. I mean, I don't do a consistent thing like this. But the first day of class, I always do an icebreaker, and it usually starts with, what's your name and where are you from? And then the questions get progressively more interesting and the students are moving and talking to different students. And my slide 7 is my favorite. They have to give 3 compliments to the person across from them. And then I can feel it. I can feel the energy level go up right after we do that. Another thing, I guess, just for connection with the students, and I found this helped me a lot with problems in the class. I did fluency journals. And so I would write every week. The students had 15 minutes to write and I would respond to all of them every week.
Yeah.
And that was a one-on-one, and I found that less cheating and more engagement. And I did it kind of as a survival thing because it was the first time I had a really big class and I felt like, how can I connect with everyone? And that worked. That's all.
I love that. Fluency journals. Sometimes I'm a bit like, oh, I didn't need to know that about you. But yes, I agree. It's a brilliant way to connect. I sometimes get them to swap with each other as well and respond to each other, as long as they're aware they're going to do that. And I love the compliments thing. So going to do that.
If you have any more questions, if anybody has a question, just unmute your mic and ask.
Avril, do you have a question?
Yeah, well, my question really is, could you please send me some more of these great ideas? I love the way that, you're starting the classes with those deep questions, just are really important. Something that I've been doing since, we've been online and with COVID is to ask the students to give themselves a rating out of 10. It's a mood rating to see how they're feeling. And I wasn't really sure. And then I asked them, what would bring you up to 10? So if they're a bit low, like they're at 4, what would bring you up to 10? But it's also been really good for judging the students' overall mental health. So if they've had a consistently low rating, I've realized and had, one-on-one conversations with those students, and some of them have actually gone to take counseling or gone to ask for extra help. So it's kind of just a good way. It's been a good way to keep an eye on the students. That's my idea, but I would love some more of yours, please.
Yep. Okay, I will share them. But you also have great ideas like this, and the asking 1 to 10. I also do that in another class where I actually teach positive psychology, and it's very interesting what they would need to bring them up to a 10, because often they just say, no, I'm leaving space because I don't want to be a 10, because then there's no room for improvement, right?
Yoshi,
Yes.
could you possibly put the PDF of your slide, of your PowerPoint slides, in the upload them if you can,
Upload them to,
or if people are interested.
yes, I can absolutely upload them. I'm not sure I know where.
Chat.
Or
Oh.
I think you can in the events Zilla somewhere. There's a place for files, isn't there? That's what I heard.
Is there?
Well,
I heard. I haven't confirmed, but that's what rumor has it.
yes, but anyway, it looks like there is not that function. It's strange. Okay.
Could I add something that I do? It's not necessarily an activity, but it's more like an approach to language teaching to help try to reduce students' anxiety. It was just and so that they can self-disclose in English. I'm constantly, and it's not every class I talk about how their English is that they're the majority, like the non-native speakers are the majority in the world, and that native speakers need to change the way that they speak, that they're a bigger group, that they have more power, and that the way that they speak, I understand 100%, even if they make a grammar mistake. I'm always like, so you could say it this way, but the way you said it, it's correct too. I understand.
Yeah.
And I give examples, and then like it took a couple, like this semester, I didn't meet my students in person, but then after like there was one class that was just like they wouldn't talk, but then something finally after just sharing that philosophy that I had, students, I came to class one day and they're all talking to each other. And I was like, in English. I was like, and that's what I really focused on a lot, and I think it really helped with that class at least, and others.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's so important. And also when you have multicultural classrooms with native speakers, I often, say to them, your language is useless if you're not coming down to the context of the listener, right? That communication is about matching the people that you're with, and there's no point speaking at a level where they're not understanding you. So it's your responsibility also as a speaker to make sure you understand where the listeners are joining you.
Thank you, Yoshi. All right, everyone, I'm going to ask you to all unmute yourselves and open your cameras if you wish, so we can let Yoshi know your appreciation by either applauding in your mic or by pushing the applause button in the reaction button at the bottom. Thank you, Yoshi.
Thank you, Yoshi.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
I
you,
will do what I
everyone.
can with
Now, sorry, one last thing. We have about 18 or 19 minutes before the next presentation in this room starts. So if you would like to continue the Q&A or comment session, we can continue for another 18 or 19 minutes.